I have a boyfriend. Delete me, thanks. The text from my girlfriend popped up on my screen, and it completely short-circuited my brain. I sent back a single question mark. The reply was an instantaneous red exclamation point. Blocked. So, let me get this straight. My girlfriend has a boyfriend, which begs the question, who the hell am I? My girlfriend, Claire Sterling, had been buried in work lately, pulling the kind of hours that made a regular corporate drone like me feel like a slacker. I was worried she was skipping meals, so I just finished making a rich, slow-cooked chicken soup to bring to her office. I was just about to text her a heads up when her message landed like a bomb. I have a boyfriend. Delete me, thanks. Claire was nothing if not efficient. It looked like she was doing a mass purge of every man on her contacts list. She must have sent it to me by mistake, right? I sent the question mark. The red exclamation point was my answer. It seemed my girlfriend's boyfriend wasn't me, which meant my girlfriend had a new boyfriend, and I was blocked. The moment I saw that red icon, I saw red myself. Without a second thought, I dialed her number. Before I could even launch into my tirade, a smooth, magnetic male voice answered. Hello? Who's speaking? Did she move on that fast? Let me talk to Claire Sterling, I said, my voice ice. A condescending chuckle came from the other end. She's a little busy right now. Can't come to the phone. My volume doubled. Look, buddy, I don't know who you are, but you should know that Claire Sterling has a boyfriend. I'd advise you to back the hell off. The man on the other end spoke with unhurried arrogance. Oh, is that so? Well, how about I have her call you back after she gets her clothes on? He hung up. So that's what all this overtime was about. I'd been with her for years. I'd seen every side of her, but I'd never seen her as a cheater. My anger maxed out. I grabbed my keys and shot out the door, driving straight for her office building in the Loop. That damn woman. If she wanted to find someone else, fine, but do it after breaking up with me. If she was going to make my life a living hell, I'd return the favor. It was almost 10 p.m. By the time I screeched to a halt in front of the Sterling Corp Tower, the lobby was empty except for the security guard. Only one floor was still lit up. I stormed inside. The guard, an older guy named Frank, looked up in surprise. Mr. Vance, here to pick up Ms. Sterling. I ignored him and jabbed the elevator button. As the doors opened on her floor, I could already hear voices. I followed the sound to a large conference room. Unbelievable. They were having their little tryst in a conference room. Getting their thrills, were we? I shoved the door open with one hand and roared, Claire Sterling! I froze. The conference room was filled with more than a dozen people, all of whom were now staring at me. In the middle of the group, a man with thin, gold-rimmed glasses smiled politely. Mr. Vance, you're here. Is there something so urgent? At the head of the table sat a woman in a crisp white blouse, her hair pinned up. The bright fluorescent lights made the shirt slightly translucent, revealing the faint outline of a bra strap. She stood up, a look of shock on her face. Seeing the fury in my eyes, Claire started towards me, looking nervous. But the man with the glasses stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Mr. Vance, I'm sorry, but we're in the middle of a meeting discussing sensitive company information. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. His gesture was less of a request and more of a dismissal. I took a deep breath and looked past him to Claire. Do you need me to leave? Claire shook her head. Of course not. She sidestepped the man and came to my side, reaching for my hand, pulled it away. Ethan, what's wrong? She whispered, her voice laced with concern. Making a bigger scene would just make me look like an unhinged lunatic. I reined in my temper. It can wait. Finish your meeting. Claire glanced at the team behind her, then pulled me toward the empty chair next to hers. As we passed the man with the glasses, he adjusted them on his nose. Ms. Sterling, this is an internal company meeting. I'm not sure it's appropriate for this gentleman to be present. His face was tight, but he forced a smile, as if he were just offering a gentle reminder for the whole room to hear. Claire shot him a sidelong glance. Leo, what are you still doing here? So his name was Leo. Claire, he said, a note of embarrassment in his voice. I was just keeping you company during the meeting, waiting for you to finish up. Why would I need you to keep me company? My executive assistant isn't even required to be here. What makes you, my executive assistant's assistant, think you need to be? Her tone was glacial. She did not look happy. Was this an act for my benefit, or was it real? This young, refined-looking guy, Leo, had apparently been in the conference room the whole time, and Claire hadn't even known. The others looked at Leo with surprise, seemingly shocked she would speak to him so harshly. Claire, this is the only room on the floor with the lights on. It's dark out there. I get scared, Leo said, looking at her with a pathetic, wounded expression. So, to recap, this polished young man, Leo, was her assistant's assistant. He'd been waiting for her to get off work, and he was calling her Claire in that overly familiar way. Their relationship was clearly not as simple as it looked. I stepped back, crossed my arms, and watched the two of them perform. Claire caught my scrutinizing gaze and immediately straightened up in front of me, her voice now laced with urgency. Ethan, I barely know him. My parents asked me to give him a job here. After explaining to me, she turned her cold gaze on Leo. You told me today that you had nothing to do after work and wanted to stay and learn. If that's the case, then do your actual job and stay out of places you don't belong. Her voice was sharp and impatient. She flicked her hand toward the door, dismissing him. Leo froze for a second, clearly stunned that she would humiliate him so publicly. He stared at her, then shot a venomous look at me. What about him? He's not an employee. Why does he get to stay? Claire stared back at him, offering no explanation. Two icy words left her lips. Get out. Leo's face went pale. He wilted, turned, and slowly walked out of the room. Claire pulled me down into the seat beside her. We were in the middle of the meeting, she whispered. I didn't even notice he was in here. Her performance was, I had to admit, acceptable. I nodded, giving her a look that said, carry on. The rest of the executives at the table showed no surprise at seeing me sitting next to their CEO. As soon as the meeting ended, I swiveled my chair to face Claire. I pulled out my phone, brought up our last text exchange, and held it in front of her. All right, Ms. CEO, care to explain? Claire leaned in, her eyes widening as she read the screen. Her pupils contracted. She took my hand, stroking it gently. Ethan, wait for me. I promise, I'll take care of this. With that, she grabbed her jacket and stormed out of the room like a hurricane. If it weren't for the constraints of her pencil skirt, she might have actually taken flight. She burst into the executive assistant's office, marched right up to Leo, and held out her hand. My phone. Now. Leo, startled by her ferocity, flinched. He fumbled in his pocket and produced a phone, holding it out to her with both hands, his eyes brimming with a pathetic, puppy-dog sorrow. Claire snatched the phone, unlocked it, and went straight to her blocked list. I leaned over her shoulder. Unbelievable. It wasn't just me. The list included some of the company's founding board members, CEOs of major partner corporations, and, to top it all off, her own father. It seemed he had blocked every single male contact. Why did you touch my phone? Claire's voice was trembling with barely suppressed rage. It was in my drawer, charging. Leo recoiled from her raised voice, his expression growing even more pitiful. Claire, I was just trying to help you. Help me? By burning my company to the ground. Claire's hands were visibly shaking now. I knew better than anyone why she was this furious. When her family's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, Claire had hit the pavement like a rookie salesperson, networking with every executive she could, adding contacts, and begging for partnerships. Now, the company was finally back on its feet, stable and growing. And in one move, this idiot had blocked the heads of every one of their partner firms. The fallout would be catastrophic. Just as I was about to step forward and calm her down, my phone started ringing. It was a flood of calls from the very CEOs Leo had blocked, all demanding to know what was going on. So, Ms. Sterling thinks she's too good for us now? Even if she doesn't want a partner anymore, she didn't have to be so damn hostile about it. One of them grumbled. Their voices were low, but I could hear the anger. These were not just calls. They were ultimatums. One wrong move, and future collaborations would be history. I shot a glare at Leo before forcing a smile and answering the calls. I explained that her account had been hacked. After a dozen apologies and leveraging a bit of my father's reputation in the business community, the big shots eventually let it go. A couple of the CEOs I knew personally sent me a private text. You might want to keep a closer eye on your girlfriend and that assistant of hers. I glanced at Leo. They were definitely talking about him. After smoothing things over with more than a dozen executives, the smile vanished from my face. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window and stared down at the river of headlights flowing through the city streets below. I needed to see how Claire was going to handle this. If she just let it slide, I wasn't sure what I'd do. Claire stepped out of her office and made a phone call. A few minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Claire explained the situation to the officers while Leo stood frozen, his face a mask of pure shock. He clearly never imagined she would go this far. He stumbled toward her. "Claire, you're actually calling the cops on me?" Seeing that she was ignoring him, Leo turned to the officers, tears and snot running down his face. "Officers, this is all a huge misunderstanding. We're childhood friends. I was just playing a little joke on her today." One of the officers took a half step back. "Sir, regardless of whether you're friends." "We're not friends," Claire cut in sharply. The officer looked awkward. "Well, if you're not friends, then unauthorized use of someone's personal device, which has resulted in significant damages, could lead to criminal charges if the lady wishes to press them. Perhaps you two should try to work this out yourselves." Hearing this, Leo turned his pleading, pathetic eyes back to Claire. She didn't even look at him. Her voice was firm and righteous. "Officer, I suspect he's a corporate spy sent by a competitor to sabotage my company." At those words, Leo's face turned ashen. He looked at me, desperate for me to intervene. I turned my head away. Finally, Leo broke down completely, sobbing. "Claire, you can't do this to me. I just thought that since you have a boyfriend, you should keep your distance from other men. That's why I blocked them." A single, perfectly timed tear rolled down his cheek, paired with his clean-cut face. He looked genuinely pitiful. But Claire was an equal opportunity ice queen to all other men. She shot back. "What I do with my contacts is none of your business. You blocked my boyfriend first, then my business partners, and you even blocked my own father. You call that helping me?" She held her phone up for the officers to see. "Officers, my phone contains a great deal of confidential business information. I suspect he stole it with the intent to cause financial harm to my company. I demand a full and thorough investigation." Was she really going through with this? I stood there, stunned. I'd been thinking a small punishment was in order, but Claire's move, all I could say was, "Bravo." I walked over to her side and instinctively wrapped an arm around her waist. The gesture seemed to trigger Leo. He lunged toward us, pointing a finger in my face. "And what about him? He's not an employee. Why does he get to waltz in and out of the CEO's office? Why does he get to sit in on internal meetings? Just because you have a boyfriend, you're supposed to cut off your childhood friend? Are you insane?" Claire gave him a withering look. "This is my boyfriend. My future husband. My company is his company. What's the big deal about him coming into my office? He can go anywhere in this building he wants, except the women's restroom." I leaned in and whispered in her ear, "I can go in the women's restroom too, as long as you're the only one in there." The officers tried one last time to mediate, but Claire was on a warpath today. She insisted on pressing charges. And just like that, Claire and I watched as Leo was escorted away. As they let him out, he stared at me for a long, hard moment. His eyes filled with a raw, undisguised hatred. I was speechless. "You mess with my girlfriend, and you expect me to help you? Seriously." After Leo was gone, Claire pulled me into her office. She explained that her father and Leo's father were old army buddies. They hadn't been in touch for nearly a decade, but when Leo came to Chicago looking for a job, her dad had asked her to find a position for him. Who would have thought he'd start making trouble on his very first day? I shook my head inside. Another cliché story about the obsessive childhood friend. Claire locked her office door and sauntered toward me like a runway model. "You know, this Balenciaga dress has lettering on it, and it's the kind that's designed to come off easy." Before long, a symphony of harmony filled the office. The next morning, Leo's father went to Claire's dad, crying and pleading. Claire was pressured into agreeing to a settlement and dropped the charges. A short while later, I got a friend request notification on my phone. I opened it. It was from Leo. The request had been sent via Claire's contact card. As soon as I accepted, he sent me a photo. It looked like it was taken in a private dining room at a fancy hotel. A large, round table was filled with people. I recognized Claire's parents, and Claire herself was sitting right next to the person taking the picture. A smile on her face as she placed a piece of food on their plate. She looked completely relaxed and happy. A message followed. "Ethan, you don't really think Claire likes you, do you?" "No way, no way. She's really in love with me. Our parents are meeting today to discuss our wedding plans." I didn't believe a single word of it. After the last misunderstanding, if I'd been a fool and not gone to her for the truth, or if she hadn't been so decisive in calling the cops and explaining everything, our relationship would have been seriously damaged. Still, I couldn't just ignore the photo. I had to be sure. If Claire was really sitting next to Leo, putting food on his plate. Then tonight, we'd be doing more than just tearing off a Balenciaga dress. I dialed her number. 10 seconds passed. No answer. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. After what felt like an eternity, she answered. Hey, honey. What's up? Her voice was clear, so she must have stepped out to find a quiet place to talk. She sounded like she was in a good mood. I cut to the chase. Where are you? Claire paused. We trusted each other. We didn't check up on one another. I had almost never asked her such a direct question. I'm at the Intercontinental, having dinner. My parents are here and so are Leo and his parents. It's just a simple get-together between the two families. Her voice was natural, and she wasn't hiding anything. I took a screenshot of Leo's message and sent it to her. Check your texts. Is he crazy? He's not even sitting next to me. My niece is sitting next to me. Claire was clearly furious. She told me to wait a minute. A moment later, she sent me a photo and a screenshot. The photo was of her with her arm around a cute young woman. The screenshot was of her niece's Instagram story. The picture Leo had sent me was lifted directly from there. Ethan, you should come over now, Claire said. I'm going to set his dad straight. That man is certifiably insane. Her proactive invitation made me feel a little sheepish. I don't know. It's a dinner for your two families. It might be awkward for me to show up. What are you talking about? Claire said with a long, drawn-out eh. My parents adore you. They think of you as their own son. And it's perfect, with both sets of parents here. We can clear this up once and for all so Leo stops harassing me and messing with our relationship. I was still thinking it over, but Claire had already made the decision for me. It's settled. I'm sending the driver to pick you up. Before I could argue, she hung up. I figured she had a point. I changed my clothes and headed out. When I arrived at the hotel, Claire was waiting for me by the entrance. Her pout told me she was still angry. I walked over and gently pinched her cheek. Your lip is sticking out so far I could hang my coat on it. Reel it in. Humph. You're lucky you always ask me about things first. If you were like one of those guys in a trashy romance novel, you'd just snap your phone in half and fly off to another country. How would I ever find you then? What are you talking about? You think I'd let myself get played like that? If you ever cheated on me, I'd at least make sure you pulled a hamstring before I let you walk away. After I had sufficiently soothed her, we walked into the private dining room side by side. The moment we pushed the door open, the cheerful chatter inside fell silent. Claire's parents lit up when they saw me, quickly telling the waiter to add a seat and a place setting. Come on, sit next to me, Claire's father said, patting the chair beside him. The spot was right between him and Claire. I scanned the table. Sure enough, a cute young woman was sitting next to Claire. That must be the niece she mentioned. Next to the niece was Leo. The moment he saw me, the smile vanished from his face, his expression souring visibly. Claire, dear, who is this? The middle-aged man on the other side of Leo looked me up and down. This is a private dinner for our two families. Why did you bring an outsider? He looked a lot like Leo. It had to be his father, but his passive-aggressive tone had none of the grace you'd expect from an elder. At his words, Claire's mother's expression turned grim, and she shot Leo's father a look of disapproval. Sit down, Mr. Sterling said, patting my arm. He then turned to Leo's father. He's no outsider. Let me introduce you. This is my son-in-law, Ethan Vance. Oh, so this is Claire's boyfriend, Mr. Harrison forced an awkward laugh, his smile not reaching his eyes. You certainly keep a tight leash on her. Claire can't even go out for a meal without you tagging along. His words made it sound like I was some unreasonable, disrespectful control freak. But this was not an elder who deserved any respect. I settled into my seat and turned to Mr. Harrison. You know, sir, it's funny you should say that. Leo just sent me a message saying you were all here discussing my girlfriend's wedding date. An event that important, I figured as the fiancé, I ought to be here. Wouldn't you agree? I finished with a pleasant smile, my eyes on Leo. Claire's father frowned and looked at Leo. Leo, my boy, how is it that Claire is getting married and her mother and I have no idea? No, that's not it, Mr. Sterling. I don't know what Ethan is talking about. Leo jumped to his feet, waving his hands frantically to deny it. He then slowly hung his head, looking deeply wronged. Mr. Sterling, I know I was wrong about what happened last time. I meant well, but I made a mistake and I guess Mr. Vance has a bad impression of me now. But he doesn't have to hold a grudge and make up lies about me. As he finished, Leo grabbed a napkin to dab at the corner of his eye, even letting out a theatrical sniffle. Bill, it was all just a misunderstanding. Mrs. Harrison said, wrapping an arm around her son and glaring at me. And our Leo already explained himself. He was just worried about Claire getting taken advantage of by other men. Mr. Vance, was it? Mr. Harrison chimed in. You show up uninvited to our family dinner, and the first thing you do is attack my son. What exactly are your intentions? Leo and Claire were childhood friends. If he had decided to pursue her, do you really think you would have stood a chance? Like father, like son. This whole family was delusional. They actually thought it was okay to say things like that out loud. I was about to fire back when Claire beat me to it. She stood up, positioning herself between me and them. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, Ethan was invited here by my parents and me. He did not come uninvited. And for the record, there was never anything between me and Leo. I have no romantic feelings for him whatsoever. That was a point-blank takedown. She left them no room to maneuver. Leo's parents' faces darkened. Leo himself looked so aggrieved, he practically buried his face in his mother's shoulder, as if he were the romantic hero tragically spurned by a cruel woman. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's eat, Claire's father said, placing a huge, pan-seared scallop on my plate. The clinking of silverware resumed. Mr. Sterling had spoken, and Claire had made her position crystal clear. I decided to drop it and eat. The last thing I wanted was to disrespect Claire's parents. The only person at the table who seemed to be enjoying the food was Claire's niece, her chubby cheeks and bright, intelligent eyes taking everything in. As she ate with gusto, the tension in the room gradually eased. Mr. Harrison drained a glass of whiskey with Mr. Sterling and glanced between Leo and Claire. You know, time really flies. Look at Claire and Leo all grown up now. I can still see them running around my house as kids, clear as day. At the mention of their childhood, Mrs. Sterling's expression softened, and she began to reminisce about Claire's younger days. But then Mr. Harrison chuckled. Bill, you remember, don't you? We even made a little childhood pact for them back then. Claire herself said she was going to marry Leo when she grew up. He glanced at me, then covered his mouth as if he'd just remembered I was there. Oh dear, I forgot Mr. Vance was here. I hope you don't mind. That shouldn't affect anything between you two, right? This smiling tiger. On the surface, he was saying it wouldn't affect my relationship with Claire, but he was deliberately bringing up their supposed childhood intimacy. The worst part was, I couldn't really argue about things that happened when they were kids without looking petty and insecure. I glanced at Claire. She patted my hand reassuringly, then smiled at Mr. Harrison. Uncle, I think you might be misremembering. I never said I wanted to marry Leo. In fact, every time I brought good food and fun toys over to your house to play, you always took them and gave them to Leo. The atmosphere froze over once again. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Just as Leo's father was about to say something, Mr. Sterling spoke up. There was, in fact, some talk of a childhood pact. Claire looked at her own father in disbelief. She stood up to protest. Dad, you... Mr. Sterling gestured for her to sit down, then turned to Mr. Harrison. It was you, Frank, who said the kids looked good together and suggested a pact. It was only ever a suggestion. Her mother and I never agreed to it. Claire patted her chest in relief. See, honey, you heard him. There's nothing between me and Leo. I nodded, peeling a shrimp and popping it into her mouth. Leo, however, leaned forward from his seat, his eyes glistening with tears as he looked at Mr. Sterling. Uncle Bill, Aunt Linda, don't you like me anymore? You used to say you liked me a lot, that you wanted me to be your son-in-law. Mr. Sterling took a sip of tea and nodded. I did say that, but I also said that, ultimately, it was Claire's decision. If she wanted to marry you, I would support her as her father. If she didn't, I couldn't force her. He looked at me, our eyes met, and he gave me a nod of approval. Now, Claire has chosen Ethan as her fiancé, and that means Ethan is the son-in-law of the Sterling family. With that pronouncement, Leo's mother looked like she wanted to argue, but his father stopped her. Mr. Harrison forced a smile. Bill is right. We actually like this young man, Ethan, very much. We parents shouldn't get involved in our children's affairs. Let them figure it out themselves. Mr. Sterling nodded and raised his glass for a toast. But Leo, sitting next to them, was clearly not as clear-headed as his parents. He stared at Claire, his eyes wide. Claire, I don't believe you. You can't really have no feelings for me. Claire stared back at him, baffled. Why don't you believe it? I just don't like you. Then why did you always stick up for me when I was bullied as a kid? Claire shook her head. I was tall for my age. If I didn't help you, my parents and your parents would have lectured me endlessly when I got home. I was just tired of hearing them nag me about not taking care of you. Leo looked at her in disbelief. Then in freshman year of high school, when that girl wrote me a love letter, why did you beat her up? Claire did that. I gave her a look of astonishment. She stood up, exasperated. That whole thing still makes me mad. You told that girl you had a crush on me, so she came and started a fight with me. We got into a huge brawl, and she scratched up my face. Honestly, if I were Leo, I would have just shut up and eaten my dinner. The more he talked, the more embarrassing it got, but he was determined to slam his head into this particular wall. Then why did you give me a job at your company as soon as I came back? And as your assistant? I looked into it. You've never hired an assistant directly without a full interview process. Claire put her hand to her forehead, completely fed up, because you went to my mother and told her you couldn't find a suitable job and asked her to help you out. That's why you ended up at my company, and you were the assistant's assistant. My plan was to give you a do-nothing job so you would stay out of my work and my life. But what happened instead? The moment you arrived, you nearly cost my company several major clients. Claire was getting angrier as she spoke. Leo, from now on, stay away from me. I don't want to see you again. Got it? In front of everyone, Leo covered his face and ran out of the room, sobbing. His parents quickly followed him out. I looked at the table. Besides Claire's niece, who was still happily eating, no one had touched their food. I turned to Claire's parents, embarrassed. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, I'm so sorry. I ruined your dinner. Mr. Sterling waved his hand. Nonsense. If anything, we should thank you. You helped us see that kid's true colors. I just don't get it. He used to be such a nice boy. What happened to him? Claire muttered under her breath next to me. He was never that nice. For the next few weeks, Leo finally went quiet. He vanished from our lives. His social media, however, was a different story. It was a daily stream of angsty poetry and nostalgic throwbacks. He kept posting old photos of him and Claire as kids. And I had to admit, Claire was a beautiful child. She'd never shown me those pictures before. I figured he was posting them for her and me to see. But I didn't really care. Kids play house and call each other husband and wife all the time. It meant nothing. About a half a month later, Leo suddenly blew up on TikTok. His conventionally handsome face, combined with a tall frame, some clever makeup, and a knack for street dance and basketball, quickly made him a viral sensation. He started live streaming and selling merch. He seemed to be doing quite well for himself. Seeing him focused on his own career, Claire and I finally breathed a sigh of relief. After the whole ordeal with Leo, Claire felt it was best to finalize our engagement sooner rather than later. Her parents agreed, and mine had no objections. At Claire's urging, we set the date for our engagement party for the following week. Both our families got busy with the preparations. Everything was going smoothly, but then, 2 days before the party, a story exploded online. A beautiful CEO of a major corporation had allegedly dumped her childhood sweetheart to get engaged to her new side piece. The trending hashtags about a CEO Ms. S and a homewrecker Mr. B were painfully obvious. They even included photos of me and Claire. All that was missing were our social security numbers. In today's climate, the hatred for a wealthy, cheating woman is off the charts. Add to that the public scorn for me, the guy who knowingly got involved with her, and the comments were brutal. They dragged my entire family tree through the mud. Ethan, don't worry. I'll handle this. Don't let it get to you, Claire said over the phone before diving back into crisis mode. I went online to figure out what happened. The childhood sweetheart was, of course, Leo. Was he spreading these rumors? I looked up his most popular videos. He never mentioned me or Claire by name, but during his live stream breaks, he would talk about the person he loved, his eyes would get red, and he'd start tearing up. When his fans pressed him, he would describe in great detail his wonderful childhood with a certain Ms. S. Then he'd vaguely mention the arrival of a Mr. V. and how the love of his life was about to get engaged to someone else. It's okay, everyone. I can take it. He'd sob to his audience before ending the stream. After the broadcast, his massive fan base started digging. Combining his stories with the old photos of Claire on his feed, they quickly identified us. Once Claire's identity as the CEO of a publicly traded company was exposed, the story blew up into a national scandal. Public outrage was fierce. Sterling Corp stock plummeted. The board of directors was even discussing replacing Clare as CEO. Through all of this, Leo remained technically innocent. He hadn't named names. It was all the spontaneous work of his fans. We couldn't even sue him for slander. He had plausible deniability. Clare's company sent out cease and desist letters to a few major influencers who had amplified the story. It had little effect. For every video they got taken down, 1,000 more popped up in its place. More and more fans, chanting slogans about justice and refusing to back down, were determined to bring down the cheating CEO, Clare Sterling. Clare hadn't been home in 2 days, working around the clock at the office to manage the fallout. Several major partnerships had already been cancelled. Seeing the video clips of her on the news, with dark circles under her eyes, looking utterly exhausted, a wave of pain washed over me. I talked to my parents. They said the story was too hot right now, and public sentiment was too volatile. They suggested we postpone the engagement party and wait for it all to blow over. I had thought of that, but I wasn't sure Clare's company could survive the wait. Honey, look at the top trending topics. We're saved. Clare's sudden, ecstatic call left me completely clueless. I opened TikTok. The #1 trending topic was #influencer exposed. Childhood sweetheart story a hoax, the real homewrecker revealed. The most liked post was a video recording. It was the dinner at the hotel, with Clare, her parents, and Leo's family. The video was a bit shaky, but the picture and sound were perfectly clear. The video showed Leo being aggressive and demanding, and Clare stating, in no uncertain terms, that she had never liked him. No way, so there was no homewrecker at all. So sorry, CEO Queen, we totally wronged you. Please accept my humblest apologies. Leo is the worst. Clinging to her like that and then playing the victim. It's disgusting. Overnight, the tide of public opinion turned 180 degrees. Leo stopped posting videos and even disabled comments on his Twitter. I called Clare to ask what happened. On the other end of the line, she laughed with pure relief. Remember that little girl sitting next to you? Yeah, your niece. What about her? Haha. She saw how tense the atmosphere was that night, so she took out her phone and started recording. I knew it. That little genius had the eyes of a hawk. A truly remarkable kid. We could finally have our engagement party. On the day of the party, we invited close friends and family from both sides. It wasn't a huge crowd, but as my parents and I drove up to the hotel, our car was blocked. I got out to see what was going on. It was a setup, and the person trying to pull the insurance scam was none other than Leo, whom I hadn't seen in a while. He looked terrible. His eyes were sunken, his face gaunt and haggard. He glared at me, his eyes red and filled with a burning hatred. I thought he was about to get violent. Instead, his voice cracked as he begged, "Ethan, please, I'm begging you, let us go. Tell Clare to invest in my family's company. If she doesn't, we're going to go bankrupt." I frowned down at Leo, who was now sitting on the pavement in front of my car. I scoffed. "I can't help you with that. You should be talking to Mr. Sterling. Ethan, if you don't help me, I'm staying right here. You hit me with your car. You're not getting engaged today." Leo hissed under his breath. Then he lay down on the ground and started shouting that a rich man had hit him and was trying to drive away. A crowd started to gather, pointing and whispering. I did a quick calculation. Calling the police, filing a report. The whole process would take hours. The engagement party would be over by then. Just as I was trying to figure out what to do, my dad got out of the car. He walked over to Leo and crouched down. His expression kind. "Young man," he said gently, "I heard your family's business venture out west went under. If it weren't for the Sterlings helping you out, you'd be sleeping on the street right now. You know, there's an old saying about a snake trying to swallow an elephant. What do you think would happen if your family's biggest creditor, that firm from New York, found out you were here in Chicago?" Leo scrambled to his knees, shaking his head frantically. Don't tell them. Those people are monsters. They'll eat us alive." With that, he jumped up and ran off. The rest of the engagement party went off without a hitch. A month later, we had the wedding. At the grand reception, as Clare and I were greeting guests, I saw a familiar face in the crowd. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, his face a little pale, but it couldn't hide his handsome features. Leo's eyes met mine, and I could feel the hatred radiating from them. But this time, he'd learned his lesson. He didn't approach me. I was about to turn away when I saw a heavy-set woman in her 50s or 60s walk up to him. Leo looked at her like he'd just seen a ghost, trembling slightly, but he still dutifully took her arm. The two of them walked hand in hand up to the second floor. disappearing into one of the private suites reserved for guests. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed them, stopping outside the door when I heard a pained cry from inside. Eavesdropping, honey? Claire, radiant in her wedding dress, appeared silently beside me, making me jump. I put a finger to my lips in a shush gesture, then pointed at the door. Claire leaned in to listen for a moment, then pulled me away with a look of disgust. Nope, that sound is just foul. Erase it from your memory, now. I looked at her, confused. How am I supposed to do that? It's pretty unforgettable. Claire locked the door to an adjacent empty suite and did a slow spin, her white gown flaring out. White garter stockings and pure white heels. Is this enough to make you forget? I swallowed hard and raised my hand. Only if you can be louder than them. After our honeymoon, our old high school invited distinguished alumni back for its 90th anniversary celebration. Claire, as a prominent entrepreneur, was asked to give a speech. After her speech, Claire, a natural center of attention, sat down next to me and looked out at the students in the audience. Honey, what do you think was better, college life or high school life? I stared at the stunning, sophisticated woman beside me. Is that a trick question? Why would it be? She asked, genuinely curious. I leaned in close to her ear and whispered, well, college students are definitely more experienced. It was Claire's turn to stare at me, her eyes wide. What are you talking about? I meant the student life, the classes, the freedom. Oh, right. I grinned. Well, in that case, come on. Let's go find a spot behind the bleachers. I can give you a hands-on demonstration of why college life is so much better.